All right, GMH listeners, this is another special episode where I'm sitting down with Richard Valtr, who is the founder of Mews. And if you have listened to my old show, Slick Talk, or have been a fan, you'll know that I've interviewed Richard twice before this, and this is our third interview. But the reason why we're doing this is if you haven't seen the news on Skift or anywhere else on LinkedIn, then you'll need to know that Mews has raised their $300 million Series D round, giving their company a $2.5 billion valuation, one of the largest hotel tech raises ever. And it comes at a moment that hotel tech consolidation, AI hype, and margin pressure are colliding. So Richard is very philosophical, and you'll love this conversation as we talk about data, AI, the 24-hour, 365 mindset approach on what it actually means to truly use guest experience as a measurable output to successful hospitality. So I hope you enjoyed this episode with Richard Valtr. So let's begin. All right, Richard Valtr, welcome back on the same show, but kind of different. How are we doing?
I know. Well, like a lot has happened for you, So
yeah.
And
Well,
for us. So
yeah, I was gonna say a lot for you, a lot for me. Life is changing, life is growing. But to set the stage, as we kind of did in the beginning of the episode here, we've chatted. This is our third interview together since 2021, and then again in 2023. We seem to have a theme of twos almost. And now we're finally here in 2026. And one, just love the philosophy mindset that you have around hospitality. So you're one of my favorite. I've said this on many other shows and many episodes in my career that you're one of my favorite guests because of how philosophical you get. And so I'm hoping we get into that a little bit today. But you guys obviously have a great round of news that has happened. Obviously a lot of buzz as people are probably listening to this today, that you guys raised $300 million in a Series D venture funding. And so I want to jump into just a lot of what does this actually unlock for Mews, because you guys have had Mews Ventures, you've acquired 15 companies, like just so much has already happened. What is 300 million going to do for you guys today?
Like, it's weird because it's like, I was actually just talking to one of our colleagues about this, because to a certain extent, it's like the more later stage you get, the more actually it's just putting more firepower on the things that are already working. It's not really kind of unlocking a new thing or doing something that you're already not doing. It's actually just doing more of the thing that you hoped would work, 2, 3, 4 years ago. And a lot of it is just like building on those foundations, and then figuring out, what's nice is that you, for example, you might have a build strategy for something, and then you go, actually, with this amount of funding, basically, we can now actually bring in a team that we really admire, we really, really like, to accelerate it. Or we think, or we can build much faster or something like that. But roughly, like, most of the things at this point have actually kind of been, done and decided maybe 2, 3, sometimes 6, 7, 8 years ago. So they're just all kind of there, and it's like really, really nice to actually, some of the things that like I was thinking about and doing 8 years ago, and then now seeing them actually kind of, because they're difficult and because they're so hard, but actually seeing them really, really play out, like, that's probably the most gratifying.
Well, and from an outsider's perspective, then it's like, oh, overnight success, right? But 8 years you've been planning where you are today. So yeah, it's not really overnight like we think it can appear sometimes. And social media doesn't help with that.
Nothing in the hospitality industry is ever fast. And I think it's always like, I sometimes get, these entrepreneurs, and they will ask me like, oh, what kind of thing should I do? And I'm like, nothing that you will do for this industry will bear fruit before 2 years. Like, it's just, there's going to be a 2-year cycle for any single thing that you want to do. So if you think that it's going to happen before 2 years, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. Well, I want to kind of bring up one of the statements from 2023 when we sat down together. We were chatting. It was a very, again, I'll put the link in the show notes for all the listeners because it was very philosophical. That's what, again, I love about our chats. But you really stated that you want Mews to become more of an ideas company. You also even had the statement that you want more entrepreneurs to create products and softwares and teams so that way Mews can fund it and accelerate and help be a part of that and grow this technology ecosystem. So my question, I guess, for you is what ideas about hospitality do you think the industry still hasn't fully accepted that Mews is either trying to solve for or you're just seeing in the industry overall?
Like, I think in general, like the kind of like, I feel like there's always like two central theses to Mews that nobody else seems to kind of ascribe to, so kind of fully understand. And it's like the first is that we're building for guests to have experiences. And hotel is only a part of that. It's a big part of that. Basically, it's an 8-hour out of the 24-hour clock. Like that's the fundamental thing. Like you're going to sleep in a room and a bed, basically. But a hotel is not just a room and a bed. But most vendors, a lot of hoteliers basically still treat it that way. And I think that like actually, there's so much more that you can build for those 16 hours of experiences. And yet so few do. And so I feel like that's the thing that I wish people thought about more and kind of built for more and cared about more. And I think the second part is then, just that kind of basic structure of everything should be posted on a guest profile because that's what you're building. And so if you're a brand, for example, or if you're kind of, thinking about it, like not just from a single hotel over a 72-hour period, but really thinking about it as kind of, multi-property or kind of, brand, you've got to think about it basically from the perspective that like, this is actually where you start thinking about, the full 24 hours, the full kind of 365-day experience and like the brand perspective that you have. And again, I feel like there's nobody else in our industry that talks about things in that way. They don't kind of talk about like how much of the hotel is being used for work time, how much of the hotel is being used for playtime or kind of or leisure or any of these things. And I feel like we've been talking about it for 5 years, and I feel like actually the market responds really well. Hoteliers actually respond really, really well. It's just the vendors basically like, they're just like, look, every single thing in this industry has been built before. All we have to do is just like copy it basically from either systems that have been, around for 30 years. And there's just like this very weird thing that a lot of the vendors, I feel like, just don't want to embrace a different way of doing things basically. Because I feel like they're also kind of like very, very risk averse in that sense.
Yeah, it seems like the technology side of, at least from my purview, the technology side of hospitality is really just kind of copied and pasted the SaaS model of like what Salesforce would do or any other like normal, quote unquote, normal SaaS company for a business, taking that B2B approach rather than going into the experience approach. And I do remember even when we were talking last in 2023, talking about the mind share and the wallet share of the guest being the 24-hour 365, right? Like they shouldn't just be using a room for the 8 or 6 hours they're sleeping or using the bathroom or getting ready for work or whatever. It should be that they should look, I kind of almost want to phrase it as they should be looking at your brand as like almost a lifestyle brand, and how I think F1 does a great job of this, where like you see people wearing Formula One shirts with Porsche and Red Bull and all these logos all over their clothing. Not saying hotels need to go that route, but they take that outside of the arena.
You want to be like, that's basically like how I think people actually live their lives, right? Like, and so we even had this like ITB stand with this basically, and it was like quite a famous one. And we kind of all dressed up as, race car drivers, and we had all of these. But I feel like that's actually a good representation of a modern customer. They'll have like an Apple sign here, basically, they'll have this. And I think like hotel brands just don't spend enough time basically like thinking about like, what does it mean for me to be this? They talk about loyalty, but they don't talk about it basically as like, as you want that person who's walking around who has all of those kind of stickers, and one of them should be, one of the brands,
Yeah.
and they
Hilton
dilute
Marriott
their
do
own message.
it.
Well, but
Yeah.
but they don't, right? Because then
Mhm.
they have 20 other brands that
Yeah.
dilute the main core message. And then I think it kind of gets into this thing of like, well, do you want to be a brand for the owners, or do you want to
Mm,
be a brand for the consumers?
mm,
And which of those two brands is actually more important for you? Yeah.
yeah.
And again,
Yeah.
like, and then you go like, well, when you go asset light, basically, like, does that mean that you're actually more on the consumer side? And like, what are you actually doing for the owners as well? And it's like, it's all of these things that I feel like there's kind of unresolved tensions in this industry. Yeah.
Mhm.
That just, it's like one thing, but it's not the other. But then you have to choose between those two things, basically. And you have to kind of figure out, like, is it Marriott or is it Bonvoy?
Yeah.
Which of
That's a
those
good
two
point.
things are you?
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a great point. And I love what you were saying earlier too, how like traditional operators today, I kind of just picked on the tech side. Now I'm going to pick on the operational side in terms of, we do measure success, I guess, by like guest review scores somewhat. And then like RevPAR and occupancy numbers. But you and I have talked about multiple times. I've seen you post on LinkedIn a lot too around experience being a measurable output. And I'm
Just guest
curious.
spend,
Yeah.
like that's the thing. Like, what is your guest actually kind of spending the money on? Basically, like, how are they actually kind of spending time with you, or
Mhm.
spending, their kind of hard-earned dollars with you, to a true like guest lifetime value perspective. And even if that guest basically does only come for a 72-hour perspective, like, that's also a model, and that's also a model of a guest. Sure, like the one that comes back, if you're a single property, if it's a customer that comes back every single year, that's one thing. But if it's somebody who's basically kind of spending time with your brand, like, you want to have that experience. And again, like, it's like those are fundamental things about the way that you build your software. Yeah.
Mhm.
And nobody builds it basically in this way that's kind of CRM centric. Yeah. To
Yeah.
be able to actually kind of track that. And there's like different things that you can then do. But I feel like that's the thing that's really, really interesting about, for example, now AI, is that we have this fundamental model. Yeah. And just like AI agents just make it really, really easy. And you don't need to kind of have, everyone's talking about like, oh, there's an MCP for this and MCP. And it's just like, yeah. But like, you still have to clean up that data, because you're just
Mhm.
basically like putting in trash here, trash there.
Yeah.
And the fundamental model of understanding what it is that you're doing, doesn't matter that basically like this bit of, you have one representation of a customer in your CRM, and that representation of a customer basically is now a room in your PMS. That doesn't work. You have to
Mhm.
rebuild it basically, and you have to go to a place where, if you want to have an AI agent kind of all the way through to, for example, then your POS, all the way through to your kind of event management system, all of these different things, you have to integrate all of those things together.
Mm. To go back really before we do get to AI, because it will be a big topic on this episode. So, sorry, listeners, we can't avoid it. But the going back to the experience part that you just said, is you said the amount of money that they spend, is that the measurable variable that we have to pay attention to in order to see the experience output, or is there other variables that you think kind
That
of
should be the only thing. Like, it's basically like, if you think about the fundamentals of the asset light model, is that you
Mhm.
essentially care about the spend of every single guest, because you don't care about the yield of every single asset. Yeah. And
Mhm.
so I think that's something that actually the brands figured out a long time ago, and that's why they kind of went into this fundamental model. It's different as well for the owners, and the owners have different perspectives basically that they kind of
Mhm.
need to. But if the fundamental measure of this industry is towards a kind of asset light model, then essentially you need to be looking at guest spend and kind of guest lifetime value, and the predictability basically of that. Yeah. And I think
Mhm.
that means that you shouldn't be looking at RevPAR as the kind of the fundamental core metric of this industry. And like, I just, for me, like that's a kind of, the original sin that I keep calling it, is
Yeah.
just like looking at something which is fundamentally at odds with what the rest of this industry actually is.
Yeah, I remember actually from 2021 you mentioning the original sin, and that's always stuck with me. So I'm glad you brought that back. Okay, so
I'm
there
trying
to
to be
segue.
consistent,
No, you are. It's great,
but
and
like I
it's
feel
like
like that's the thing. Like that's when like that's what I mean. Like you start building it basically like so long ago
yeah,
that by the time all of these things become apparent, because you need to kind of, it just like that's why it just takes a long time because
no,
there's just so
100%.
much that you have to have consistently kind of going through.
Yeah, and for the listeners, I didn't give Richard any prep into this conversation, so you have been consistent without me even giving you any notes. So it's been good to see. He's a real one. He's a real one. He's not media trained. Yeah, at least in terms of like having
That's
me prep
true
him.
as well. Yeah.
I love it. Well, yeah, this is obviously the topic we can't avoid, and the Skipped article that was published around your guys' Series D funding. Data, AI, you can't go one without the other, right? AI is only as good as the data that it receives. And I want to kind of set you up for this conversation because I have a different view. And I heard you talk about or share some thoughts with Josiah McKenzie on the Hospitality Daily around data. But I feel like the hospitality industry is really struggling with it, and operators don't own it. It feels like systems don't talk to each other, and AI can't really work without clean access. And so PMS platforms are often accused of being the gatekeeper of that data for the guests, for the operator.
Which 100% they are. Like
so,
every other PMS basically apart from us is.
yeah,
And that's why like it's because of like that's the original sin.
exactly.
Yeah. And that's essentially the thing that's actually preventing, because if you look at like some of the most like interesting platforms, even in hospitality, like I look at like, shout out to Canary, like in the way that they're essentially just the CRM layer on top of like, crappy systems. Yeah. And it's like, there's so many of these, like whether they're messaging platforms or like all of that is where it's like, those are the really, really good things that really matter to this industry. Yeah. Because like making the check-in experience a welcome experience.
Yeah.
Meeting the guest where, the idea of sitting in your room, and having to go downstairs to order something or to have to pick up the phone where like nobody picks up the phone anyway. Like, it's just like, even, it's like, I don't, I've been, I've done like my share of like cold calls my entire life. So I feel like I'm less like conditioned against it than most people. Most people hate calling. And like, I just like most people just want to go somewhere and just like pick something out and actually just like get it delivered to their room. Yeah. It's like, it shouldn't be that difficult. Yeah. In the same way that like DoorDash is not that difficult. Yeah. And in the hotel industry, we make it difficult, and we make it difficult because of the systems that we use. And so I think like before we go into AI, we just have to have a moratorium of just saying like what works. Yeah. And like what works is not charging things to folios in rooms because they are not representations of the real world. Like that's the whole point. It's like we started off with a philosophy that every single thing that we build is for what the real world actually is. And that's why all of this kind of works. Like the fact that you're having to do, to get really philosophical, it's like, I always feel that it's like, people also used to think that the sun revolved around the earth. And so, sure, like you just create these like incredibly sophisticated mathematic models to show that the sun was basically like rotating around the earth. Fundamentally, they broke the maths. Yeah. And then lo and behold, you basically kind of said like, look, like mathematically, the earth goes around the sun, and suddenly everything fell into place. And that's where I feel we are, still in 2026 with most, with most systems. And it's just because of the fact that like, sure, they can kind of work. Yeah. You can kind of piece a lot of these things together, but fundamentally they're just all wrong. Yeah. And I think that's why we have the success that we do, because fundamentally we're just like doing everything in the right way. And sure, like we've still got like, 20 or 30 years of features to catch up on, and basically like all of the different things that like have been built, and like, they work and they serve certain purposes. But, it's, if you believe that the world is flat, or if you believe that the world basically, um, you know, like the sun revolves around the earth, you're never going to be able to kind of build scalable systems that actually fundamentally work in a good way. And,
Yeah.
and that's what it is.
Well, from my part, I just want to like maybe pick this with you a little bit. And I've had private conversations with a bunch of people in the industry, from short-term rental operators to hotel independents. And it seems like most PMSs, you can take Mews out of this one, but most PMSs gatekeep the data, which then harms the operator to have that personalized effect with the guest. Then the PMS is charging an arm and a leg to the integrated partners to have access to that data. And then the data is not standardized. So it's a mess to even get. And then once you get it, everyone's building different APIs or different field keys for, the same thing, right? Like an ocean front versus ocean view versus beachfront versus lake view. They're all the same thing, but we all call them different fields. So you have teams on the tech side that are managing and spending, companies are spending like 30, 50, $100,000+ just managing these APIs to connect things that don't really want to talk to each other, but they have to. And so that cost then gets passed down to the operator, which then again passes that down to the guest. So the guest is getting a bad experience because they're not getting that personalized welcome, like you said. And then also they're getting charged for it because the operator has to kind of pass down that cost. And so, there's been talks
of
like
operators basically kind of then saying, I won't get this other system, which actually would add to the guest experience and would actually kind of add to the, general ideas. I'm just going to basically like manage it with this like crappy system because that's the only thing that I kind of want to, that I really get ROI on. And so because of that, like and that's again, like where it all kind of comes in. Like, and we, like this is basically like also kind of why in the age of AI, like, an MCP is not going to solve that, because you still need something which, I think you can kind of think about it in different ways and without getting too technical. Like we just call it a semantic layer, and you need to have that semantic layer, and that needs to be standardized. And that like, that's why like, like we want to kind of be able to like, have, that's why we open source, like basically that's why we have an open API.
That's what I was going to ask you. It's like, is that the answer to this problem? Is open API, or is it?
But that's basically like the problem. The problem is that so much of the time the incumbents in this industry just say that like, oh, we have it. So we did like our open API in 2016. And lo and behold, every single PMS basically now has an open API. And yet they don't work like the Mews open API. Like it's an open API means that I can go to your website and find out every single specification and connect to it. Very few PMSs actually have that. And they'll say things like, well, Mews doesn't charge for connections, nor do we. It's like, okay, fine. Well, they're not charging for the connections to the customer anymore. It's not the hotel that pays for it, because Mews has basically like now made it really difficult. But they're now charging basically like the vendor. So the vendor is going to, like, the other one basically is now going to have to pass on those costs. And again, like those are just things that we don't do. Because again, like we want to kind of see, the explosion of basically like all of these things. And I think like one of the things that we've also realized is like, it's not just one core system in hospitality that needs to be connected. And it's not just one thing. Like, and that's why I think a lot of the things that you'll see in our press release is that I think part of like our change in thinking, or kind of evolution in thinking, which is funny because like I called this basically like what we were doing back in 2012 was essentially that we're just building an operating system. And like at the end of the day, like the operating system is the thing that fundamentally actually kind of describes what the operations are like, and then tries to standardize that basically as well.
Is that what kind of the thinking was behind the data chat acquisition, in order to, because like I think the big issue truly is like data standards even across the board, right? Like again, everyone calls, whatever type of room or product or price a little bit different. And so pulling all that into one system, I can imagine just being kind of really costly and really chaotic. So is that kind of the thinking with them? And that cool.
Being able to basically because the first part was the team itself. It was just, it's just different. Like when you encounter teams that have built in an AI first way, it's just different.
Yeah.
And that's not to denigrate basically like any programmer that's been born basically like before 2005 or something like that. But essentially it's just different to kind of build first with AI and then and think about it in that way basically and use cursor in that sense. So that's one. Then basically like thinking about like, okay, how can I get agents to do every single thing for me so that I automate every single aspect? And I think that was another thing that we really kind of wanted to do. And we were already doing a lot of that basically ourselves. And, with that, that's where we kind of started really, really investing a lot in semantic layers, in the way that we thought about like how to actually kind of put all of these things together, how to make sure that like all of our data is kind of agent friendly. And so that's actually like how we first got to know Data Chat from that perspective. And then, I think we just understood that it actually made everything that we were already kind of working on, it just accelerated that process basically. Because again, because of the funding that we've had, because of the success that we've had, it just helps us accelerate basically. But like you can't get to that unless you've actually kind of built all the foundations and you're already kind of, how to plug those companies in basically. They're already kind of working on a team that already exists and on a product basically that's already, it's already there, rather than kind of trying to go like, okay, now I can like AI lipstick on a pig basically.
Yeah. That's a good example. Well, I do want to kind of ask in terms of AI, right? Like we've talked about data, now the AI section. I only use AI for work. I refuse to use it for personal. I'm probably gonna be one of the last people to hold out. Yeah. I'm gonna be one of the last ones to hold on to that probably for a little bit. I go down the doom and gloom route of AI where it's like, Sam Altman says, the end of the world probably will be that, AI.
But he needs to say that because basically like he needs to raise the money, right? Like it's just 100%. I've not seen anything in LLMs that scares me.
No,
like
LLMs,
from that perspective,
definitely not.
like what, but like I just feel like even the way, like I love like Dwarkesh Patel and stuff like that, and I feel like his own thinking about it has basically been like largely destroyed by this. But like I feel like every single person that thinks 2027, like there's like horrific like things about like 2027 is when like we get into resource wars and stuff like that. It's like no, that's not going to happen. It's just a tool. It just makes things faster. And it's like what's good is basically like we get to a place where we get to energy equals data, like that kind of thing. But like we will still be working in roughly similar ways in 10 years from now. Like they'll be fundamentally different. It's in the same way that like we code in fundamentally different ways, but we are still making products for people. Like none of this that's happening right now will change the way people experience hotels. People won't be traveling in different ways. Like those things will not happen. There'll be different ways that people are booking. So it might be that basically the start of the booking journey is not going to be through Google. It might definitely not be through an OTA. And the payment basically like won't happen in the same way. You won't need to kind of like scrounge around for your credit card basically to make that payment and stuff like that. Like, and it might be that you're already kind of coming to set packages. But in that sense, I'm like, well, we're just basically back to the 80s. Where instead of like going to the local, like before it used to be that you had to like go outside, walk like, 500 yards. And then you'd sit down in your local travel agent, and kind of have that conversation. Now you're having to go from upstairs to your computer room or take out your phone basically like while you're having breakfast, talk to your AI, who's now your travel agent, is basically presenting you with three, perfectly created options for you.
Mhm.
Yeah, but that's not any different to the way that we used to travel in the 80s. Yeah, it's just like you've got this aberration basically in the middle, yeah, which is like you could pick and choose your own kind of things, but fundamentally consumers don't like it. Like they
Yeah.
want the packages, they want
Yeah.
the thing that and it's just like, and now you've got somebody or something with like a lot more empathy that's called an agent that's now put this package for you. And sure, like maybe Diana at the local travel agent was better at that kind of empathy because she really, really knew you. But like this agent's going to be better than that Diana.
Mm.
Yeah. And so, sure, like distribution fundamentally changes, but it changes for the better. You're now
Yeah.
not going to be paying basically like hotels are not going to be paying that much commission. You're not going to be paying basically like that many kind of things because it's all open. It's going to be much more personalized and much better. And you're
Mhm.
going to get serviced in a much, much better way. Yeah. So like
Yeah.
the distribution costs, basically, like that's what the internet does. Like it just collapses the distribution costs of everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's the main change that we'll see. I'm sure like there's a lot of great stuff that gets done with the excess,
Mhm.
but I don't think it's a societal good basically to kind of to have hotels spend 15% on distribution or 23% on distribution and things like that. Like
Yeah.
sure, maybe it'll be what's the cut of like I think it's like 4% is what like OpenAI is paying to Shopify,
Yeah.
and so maybe it goes down to 4%, and that feels pretty
In
pretty
this
normal,
economy,
like
that
pretty
feels pretty good.
yeah. And so
Yeah.
it's like so I feel like, and I don't know, like I don't see the grand brain of AI. It's just like it's
Yeah.
just something that people raise money to, but I don't think
Yeah.
that it's actually kind of going to happen anytime soon. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm the idiot.
Yeah.
Maybe like that's why
Well,
like I spoke to another kind of tech entrepreneur, and he's like, why are you doing this? Why are you raising so much money? You should be like trying to sell right now because AI is going to kill your company. I'm like, sure, great. No, like it won't. It just really won't. Like there's too many things that the AI just cannot do.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know, maybe I'm a Luddite. Maybe I'm like
No,
an
but
idiot, but
that's the
like
thing is,
I've done like this for long enough and I've kind of been around tech.
yeah,
Like we are just part of the hype cycle.
for sure. Well, that was what I was going to say is more like I use it for work. I treat it like an employee, almost a task oriented employee. It helps me get a ton done. And so, but for personal side, I just don't. But I was going to say for the AI agent, because that was a big part of the press release and seeing the article and our write up as well. But I wanted to kind of push back because I think as fast as AI is evolving on the LLM model side of things, I don't believe it's moving fast enough to go full like automatic agent mode to like run a hotel. And so
Yeah. Like that's
how
basically
long
like
do you,
that was the part of the actual thing that like I saw the article and it was just like, yeah, we don't want fully autonomous hotels. Like we want fully autonomous backends because like I feel like nobody wants to do accounting. Yeah. Nobody
100%?
wants to schedule a rota, to sit in the thing and like to have to like call everyone and basically say like, can you come Tuesday? Can you definitively come Tuesday? Can you
Yeah.
do this? And then that person basically gets drunk, and then they did show up. So now you need to kind of call up another three people. That's like, wasted hours of somebody's life, So like
Sure.
for me, like I want to automate all of that away. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want the stupid calling, the uncertainty. The uncertainty basically like of this business creates so much extra cost. So like for me, like when I talk about like automation, that's the part that I want to automate. The idea that you arrive at a hotel and there's nobody to welcome you, like
Yeah.
that's ludicrous. Like if you're trying to kind of like get away from that, like sure, like it works with an Airbnb, right? Like
Mhm.
you go in and there's a lockbox. Yeah, but like the whole thing about Airbnb is that you go and like meet a host,
Mhm.
So sure, like if you arrive at like 11 p.m., maybe there doesn't need to be a person, maybe it is a lockbox, but you still want to meet the host. You know, like that's part of the alert. That's like part of the branding of Airbnb, you know? And it's just
Yeah.
like, that's why like these things are fundamental. Like you want to meet people when you actually go traveling. Yeah, you
Yeah.
want to meet the host. You want to basically like have the person that welcomes you.
100%. 100%. Well, one of my final questions for you to kind of wrap up this episode is that your valuation of $2.5 billion came alongside this recent round of funding. Can I just ask, from a professional and personal level, what does it feel like to hear 2.5 billion as a valuation of a company that you had a dream back in Prague when you were working with your sister in in your guys' hotel? Because that was obviously like the start of Mews, where you and Matt were like, hey, we're gonna build this thing. And so I'm just curious, what does it feel like to hit that valuation type?
I like, I'm kind of like, it's really nice. It's really great to actually have something this valuable and for so many people to believe in us and for us to actually create so much value for our investors. You know, I think we've been rated, you know, best PMS basically for 3 years running. Like, I feel like, you know, and that's voted for by our customers. You know, like I feel like we're creating value for them. They see it. You know, I think that the repeatability basically of that also means that there's an increasing community of people that just give us that, and like I think that really pushes us forward, and then that gives us more resources to be able to kind of do more. But I think, you know, I was also like a bit of an idiot because like I've never thought that this company would be anything smaller than that, you know. So
Yeah.
like when we did our Series A and it was just like, you know, I think it was
Yeah.
like 30 million or something like that. Like I was like, this is so cheap. Yeah. And so like I still feel like basically like anyone who got in at this round is getting the best price on this company for like for forever. You know, so I believe in what we're doing. This is the most AI proof, and you know, that's probably gonna like really, that's like real hubris basically. But like it's just, you know, like if so many different things get automated away, you know, it's just like hospitality is the one thing that will remain forever. You know, it's like even like I love Elon Musk wanting to go to Mars because basically he's just going there for tourism, right? He just wants
Yeah.
to see it. Yeah. And it's like just like Mars is like the planetary version of like North Korea.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't have any trees. It doesn't have any like great vistas or anything like that. It's got like one stupid mountain. Yeah. You know, it's a huge mountain, but like it's like, you know, the pimple of the solar system. And like it, yeah, like you're gonna want to see it and then never come back. Yeah. But like whereas you'll want to go to so many different places on Earth, you know? So it's like, sure, like I just feel like it's always going to thrive and we will kind of value it much highly. And I think it's a great human industry to be in, to be able to welcome people. And I think like, you know, and I feel like this is only the start of the hospitality industry. I think it's actually a great vision for how we can be together as a human race, basically, to be more hospitable towards one another. So I just feel like there's just so much more growth that the hospitality industry is going to go to, and I'm really happy to be kind of like leading a company that's in it because it just feels, for all the doom and gloom, like this is the happiest industry to actually kind of be in. And yeah, so I feel like it's really just like, you know, I know that it's like the whole day one thing is always a cliche with companies, but like it really feels that we're like not even past 10% of our journey.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I do have one final question, I guess, is with this 300 million, you said earlier in the beginning of the episode that obviously building on what's worked, right? On what works, not what's new. Sometimes a lot of people see funding and think shiny toy syndrome, where it's like, okay, now we have to go build new things instead of build on top of the infrastructure you built on already, and it's working. But can we see any type of acquisition activity from you guys coming up, or how is that
Always.
gonna all be playing out?
Like we're always going to try and acquire, we're always going to try and grow. Like we're basically like, at the end of the day, we really believe in what we're doing. We believe that what we're trying to do is a good thing. We believe that our customers deserve to have more and better, and we want them to grow. And so like we're always going to try and do more, because like we really have like, you know, we want to basically like turn this entire planet into a really, really hospitable planet. And so from that perspective, there's just so much more that we can do.
I love it. Well, Richard, thank you so much for the third interview. Definitely not the last one. I appreciate all that you do for the industry, for the insights that you share, and the philosophical thinking that you bring, because I do think you are 100% correct. Not enough people approach the industry in that regard. And so, yeah, just hats off to you, and congrats on the Series G again.
Thank you so much. Like, I really hope that we, you know, get to do it earlier than every single 2 years.
Yeah.
But like, also thank you for like all the things that you do as well. Like, this is just, you know, congrats to Skift for picking you up. But like, it's like, you know, it's great to have people in the industry that have passion for, you know, actually showing different parts of the industry.
For sure. Well, yeah, Skiff got lucky, you know. I'm just kidding. Rafit, I'm just joking. Definitely I'm the lucky one, but no, seriously, it's so cool. And for all the listeners out there, I will put links in the show notes for Richard's and I's previous conversations. Also, some links for the article of the fundraise and some acquisition stories in the past. But until next time, we'll see you guys soon.